African foreign affairs ministers have been meeting at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa to deliberate on the agenda that heads of state will be discussing at talks this weekend. The extraordinary summit of the African Union will consider reform proposals for the bloc. And for more on this upcoming summit, I'm now joined by our correspondent in Ethiopia, Coletta Wanjohi. Coletta, thanks very much for joining us. So the foreign affairs ministers are busy putting together an agenda. What is topmost at the moment?
Well, at the moment, it's going to be an extraordinary summit from the 17th and 18th, meaning it has a particular agenda. And what the foreign affairs ministers have been putting through is how the presidents will go about the discussion. And basically, the agenda is straightforward. It is about discussing how the African Union should streamline the operationalization of, or the operation of the African Union Commission and the African Union itself. And this comes from the fact that in 2016, the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, was given the task to form a committee and to come up with ideas on how reforms can be made at the African Union to ensure that there is a body, a continental body that is not only citizen-centered, but a body that can be self-dependent in terms of financial issues. So that is what the presidents will be discussing. Already they've got recommendations from the Kagame Committee, as it is called, clear recommendations of how it can be streamlined, everything can be put forward, but we need the African Union heads of state to endorse this and say that this is how it should be done and how soon this should be done.
All right, so how far have they come along? I mean, 2016, 2018, that's 2 years now, and President Kagame was quite forthright at the beginning saying that we will get this done.
Yeah. Well, it has been 2 years of technical work because it's not easy. This is from the transition from the Organization of African Union to the African Union. There was a lot of, departments and commissions that were pushed forward. For example, now we have 8 commissions at the African Union, but the Kagame Committee is saying that this should be cut down to at least 6 so that we can merge, for example, the political affairs and peace and security. We have instruments within the African Union that are supposed to support the African Union, but this same institutions, as have been the case like in NEPAD, have been duplicating the work of the African Union, competing with the African Union, which is supposed to be the mother organization, for even resources to implement some issues. We also have a situation whereby they will have to think very hard about how to raise or to implement fully the 0.2% levy on imports from individual countries so that they can be able to bring this money back to the African Union. It is an issue of more of a technical issue that has been happening for the past 2 years, and now we hope now the heads of state will walk the talk, because now they've got all this put for them on a silver platter. All they have to say is, yes, this is good, we can endorse this and all this. Because at the end of the day, we've had 1,500 resolutions made by the African Union Assembly over the years, but most of these have not been implemented. So it's time to walk the talk. Technical work has taken 2 years, and now we need implementation.
All right, talking about walking the talk, this 0.2% levy, Rwanda's led the way in making sure this is getting paid over, plus 13 other countries. But there are 55 countries that are part of the AU, so there are a lot of countries that haven't come to the party yet, and I guess this will be something that will be raised over the next 2 days.
Exactly, because it's from this, from the calculations, if every country takes at least an import, either a service or a good, and levies that 0.2% and gives the proceeds back to the African Union, it has been realized then we shall be able to fund 100% of the African Union's operations. Because as we stand now, like if you look at 2017, we had a budget requirement of over $430 million for the African Union, AU Commission operations, but 72% of this was going to be funded by the donor, to come from donor funding. If you look at the AU programs as a whole, over 90% is funded by the donors. So what the Kagame Commission or the Kagame Committee is saying, if we do not take an initiative to bring money into the African coffers from the African countries themselves, then there is no need of us talking about an independent Africa and all that. So this is a very big task, because at the end of the day, we can streamline all the African Union operations, we can streamline the Commission, but if we do not have money to fund our own agenda, then we shall still keep relying on agenda based on whoever is giving the money. That's what has been happening over the time. So the presidents have a big task in this. They endorse endorsed this, and some of them who sat in these meetings have not gone with the 0.2% levy. So we are expecting to see them calling up more, and maybe some presidents ratifying this and saying, my country will do this. It has not done that. So we're expecting a lot of action in the next 2 days.
All right, so we've talked about financing of the African Union and institutional reforms. Is there anything else that is likely to come up? I see that there's an issue about the mandate of the AU Development Agency.
Exactly. So also as part of the reforms, because as part of the reforms, they've said that some agencies have been duplicating the work of the African Union. We already know that the African Union has endorsed that, for example, NEPAD, which was a technical arm, be fully integrated into the African Union and be part of the now AU Development Agency, which is a plus for the AU because now they'll not have to compete when they're going for looking for resources and all that. So we're going to see also we expect to see the African Union also redefining the roles of different instruments. For example, the PRC, or the Public Representative Committee, which is comprised of the ambassadors. It has been accused of following up on the African Union so much instead of just being a liaison between the African Union and the mother countries or the national governments. So the African Union Summit is expected to strategize and say this is your role and responsibility. Do not overdo that, because the summit has also said the ambassadors have gone beyond their role to even refuse some of the resolutions that are given by the AU Summit, which are the heads of state. So we shall see also the PRC, who are the ambassadors, being given their roles. We shall see the instruments being different instruments being given their roles, and the regional economic blocks also. We're talking about ECOWAS, SADC, East African Community, and all that. They will be told where they can start and where they can't, and where they should stop, so that we have them doing something, and the African Union as a continental body goes ahead to finish something else. Because what we have now is, for example, if you look at the ECOWAS, some of the operations they have are even bigger than the continental operations, and that kind of belittles the African Union. So we are going to see all this streamlined very well, and probably we are also expecting the African Union chairperson to give his idea on how the commission should be streamlined, and that should be given in the next summit in January 2019. All
right, so perhaps in conclusion, I know that this is an extraordinary summit, a fairly fixed agenda, looking at the things that were put on the table at Summit 10. I wonder, though, if there's going to be other agenda items that might be brought to book, especially when one considers there are very important elections taking place in the DRC.
Well, that might not be the discussions of other political issues other issues besides the main agenda might not happen, but we might see that in the small bilaterals, because when these heads of state come here, despite apart from the main summit where they do the main agenda, we're expecting to see bilaterals probably between different countries who've got interest in the stability in DRC. For example, the Great Lakes region, we might see them having, for example, a working lunch or a working dinner and all that. Already we know that some heads of state will be meeting each other for different bilaterals. So it is in these small meetings beyond the bigger summit that we shall see other critical issues, especially of peace and security, being discussed, especially by neighbors and people within the regions where these aspects are happening. For example, we know today the foreign affairs ministers met on the sideline and talked about the situation in Sudan, in South Sudan and Somalia. So that was at ministerial level. But tomorrow, when the heads of state come, and the next day, we might see this being taken to a higher level. So depending on how, and because it's not really going to be a busy summit, the agenda is straight. So we shall see small bilateral meetings or small side meetings that will tackle these different issues apart from the main agenda of reforms.
All right, Coletta, that's where we'll leave it. Thank you very, very much indeed for that update. That's our correspondent there in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, Coletta Wanjohi, giving us an update and a precursor, I guess, for the start of the 11th extraordinary session of the Assembly of the African Union, which starts tomorrow with the heads of states. But the foreign affairs ministers have been meeting today to try and solidify that agenda and how it will be discussed going forward.